The view from the 60th floor was breathtaking, but Logan Carmichael barely saw it anymore. Floor-to-ceiling windows stretched across the length of the penthouse, revealing the late winter sprawl of Manhattan glittering below. Central Park was a frosted canvas of silver and white, its trees bare, its winding paths dusted with snow. The city pulsed beyond it, impatient, relentless, magnificent. Inside, everything was perfectly still. A tray of untouched espresso sat on the marble counter of the open-concept kitchen. His assistant had left it there hours ago, along with a fresh printout of a Forbes feature that declared him America's most desired CEO under 45. Logan had read the headline and skimmed the first paragraph before setting it down next to the espresso, where both had gone cold. He stood barefoot on the polished hardwood, hands in the pockets of his tailored slacks, staring out over a city he'd once dreamed of conquering. And he had. The tech world spoke his name with reverence. News anchors speculated about his net worth the way gamblers placed bets. People called him brilliant, unstoppable, inevitable. But no one ever called him content. Behind him, the apartment gleamed like a high-end showroom. Black leather, Italian granite, curated art. Everything tastefully chosen. Everything expensive. Logan could afford any luxury in the world, except, it seemed, a moment of peace. His phone buzzed softly on the counter. A calendar alert. Wedding venue final walkthrough, 2 p.m. He swiped the notification away without a second thought. It was all handled. Lena had insisted on a full team, event designers, floral architects, culinary artists flown in from Napa. Every detail had been curated within an inch of its life, and she would be beautiful. Of that, Logan had no doubt. Lena Hollingsworth had always been beautiful. Raised in Connecticut money, with a lineage of Ivy League pedigrees and boardroom titans, she had slipped into his world with the grace of someone bred for it. Their union was more than love. It was legacy, a merging of empires. Yet Logan still hadn't written his vows. He had started a dozen times. At night, in the quiet moments before sleep. On flights. Once even in the back seat of a chauffeured car after closing a major acquisition. Each time the words had turned hollow halfway through. I promise to love you. I vow to stand by you. I never thought I'd find someone like you. Every line felt like performance. Polished. Empty. He exhaled slowly, then walked to the kitchen, picked up the Forbes article again. The photo was flattering. Chiseled jaw, sharp navy suit, a knowing half smile. The caption beneath it read, Logan Carmichael, tech visionary and founder of Cobalt Dynamics, has redefined digital commerce, and perhaps what it means to be the American dream. He dropped the magazine face down. There was a knock at the door. Come in, he called, knowing it was Angela. She never knocked unless she had something she knew he'd want to avoid. Angela stepped in, tablet in hand. She wore all black and walked with the precision of someone used to managing powerful men. Venue's ready. Lena's team is already there. She wants to go over floral elevations and lighting tiers before the walkthrough. He rubbed the back of his neck. Of course she does. Angela raised an eyebrow. Should I tell her you're running late or uninterested? Logan cracked the faintest smile. Neither. I'll be there. Good, she said. Then added more softly, You okay? He hesitated. Angela had been with him since the beginning, back when Cobalt was a rented office and a dream, back when he lived off ramen and hope, back when... I'm fine, he said. Angela didn't push. She tapped her screen. Your cousin Graham called. Twice. Wants to know if he's seated at the same table as the mayor or the actress from Grey's Anatomy. Logan laughed under his breath. Put him with the one who'll tolerate him longer. Angela smirked, then turned to leave. At the door, she paused. Logan? Yeah? Don't wait too long to figure out what you want this wedding to mean." The door clicked shut behind her. He stood there for a long time, alone again, with only the hum of silence and the soft groan of the city far below. Logan walked back to the window and leaned his forehead against the cool glass. Somewhere, years and miles behind him, there had been a girl with paint on her hands and stars in her eyes. A girl who once told him, "You're not afraid of failure. You're afraid of being seen." He had scoffed at the time, laughed it off, but she had been right, and he had never seen her again. Until recently, until the moment he sent that wedding invitation to Maya Rivera. He'd told himself it was closure, a gesture of civility, maybe even magnanimity. But if he were being honest, it was power. He wanted her to see what he had built, what he had become, and to know, deep in her bones, that she had been replaceable. It was petty, cruel even, but it was honest. What he didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Maya wouldn't arrive alone, and everything he believed about his past, his power, and his perfectly curated future was about to unravel. The letter came on a Thursday, delivered not by a mailman, but by a young man in a slim black suit who looked like he'd never set foot on a subway. Maya Rivera wiped her hands on a dish towel and opened the door just enough to peer out. The twins were shrieking in the background over who got the red marker, and Theo was elbow-deep in a box of cereal he'd dragged from the pantry. "Ms. Rivera?" the young man asked, looking only vaguely uncertain about the chaos behind her. "Yes?" He held out a heavy envelope, cream-colored, embossed, her name in raised script across the center. "From Mr. Carmichael," he said, as if the name should need no explanation. It didn't. Maya stared at it for a moment before taking it, then quietly shut the door and turned away from the sound of her children and the city outside her apartment windows. Her brownstone in Bed-Stuy was small but warm, lived in. There was a collage of crayon drawings taped to the refrigerator, chipped paint on the hallway walls, and a leaning bookshelf in the corner stacked with second-hand art books and bedtime stories. It was a life cobbled together with effort, grace, and the occasional duct tape miracle. She hadn't heard that name in 5 years. Not since Logan Carmichael had walked out of her life with nothing more than a tired apology and an overpacked carry-on, off to chase investors and IPO dreams. She sat at the kitchen table, her fingers lingering on the envelope. Heavy paper. Custom monogram. Probably cost more than her week's groceries. The flap opened with a crisp tear. Inside, an invitation. Elegant, hand-inked font. "Mr. Logan Carmichael and Ms. Lena Hollingsworth cordially invite you to celebrate their marriage. Saturday, April 16th at the Ashford Estate, Hudson Valley Black Tie. Reception to follow." Maya stared at the card, her eyes unmoving, her expression unreadable. "Mom!" Jaden yelled from the other room. "Ella used the red marker on the wall." She didn't move. A moment later, 3 little faces peeked around the door frame. Sticky fingers, wild curls, mismatched socks. Theo stepped forward first, dragging the cereal box with him. "You okay, Mommy?" Maya nodded slowly and set the invitation down on the table. "I'm okay." But the truth was, she wasn't quite sure. She hadn't expected to hear from Logan ever again, let alone in this way. The man had gone from a startup dreamer to a billionaire CEO. His name trended every other month. There were glossy spreads about his architecture-inspired offices and interviews where he said things like, "I believe in disrupting legacy systems." But nowhere in those interviews did he mention her, or the children he didn't know existed. She rose from the table, walked down the hall, and opened the hall closet. From the top shelf, she pulled down a shoebox. The one with the sonogram printouts, first birthday candles, and tiny hospital bracelets labeled Rivera, baby ABC. She hadn't hidden them out of shame. She'd hidden them out of self-preservation. Logan had made it clear he wasn't the settle-down type. He was building something bigger than love. And Maya, idealistic as she once was, had believed she could never stand in the way of that. She'd found out she was pregnant 2 weeks after he left. She'd written him a letter, never sent it. She told herself it didn't matter, that she'd do it herself, that maybe she was better off raising them on her own, free from the emotional wreckage that might come with trying to fit her children into Logan's glittering, ruthless world. And she had done it. She had worked, taught art at the community center, painted when the kids slept, and created something steady and whole from the pieces he left behind. But now he was marrying a woman who graced magazine covers and appeared in society columns. Lena Hollingsworth, whose father once owned half of Wall Street and whose smile was as polished as her family crest. And Logan had sent her an invitation. Why? She turned the card over in her hands. There was no note, no message, just a formal gesture with informal intent. Lexi arrived an hour later, Maya's best friend, godmother to the triplets, and resident bullshit detector. As soon as Maya handed her the invitation, Lexi let out a long whistle. "Is this a joke?" she asked. "Did he hit his head on a yacht and forget you exist?" Maya didn't smile. Lexi's eyes narrowed. "He wants you to see what he became. That's what this is. He wants to flex his life in your face." "I know." "You going?" Maya stared at the card again. "I don't know." "Let me rephrase," Lexi said. "You better go, but you're not going to cry in the back row. You're going to walk in there with your chin up and those 3 miracles next to you, and you're going to remind him who the hell you are." Maya looked over at her children. Jaden was trying to glue macaroni to Theo's hair. Ella was humming a Taylor Swift song under her breath. None of them knew their father. None of them had ever asked. But she had always known this day might come, a moment of reckoning. And suddenly, as Maya stared at the gold-embossed script again, something inside her settled. She folded the invitation neatly and slid it back into the envelope. Then she whispered, more to herself than to Lexi, "He thinks he's inviting me to his wedding, but he doesn't know he's also invited his children." The following morning, the envelope sat on Maya's dresser like a dare. She'd tucked it there the night before, thinking it would look less menacing in the daylight. It didn't. It still shimmered with quiet judgment, its gold ink lettering daring her to cross a line she'd once promised herself she never would. Jaden barreled into the room, barefoot and loud, holding a peanut butter sandwich that had already lost half its contents to the hallway floor. "Mom, Theo says dinosaurs still exist and he wants to keep one as a pet." Maya smiled absently and wiped peanut butter from his cheek. "Tell Theo he's responsible for the cleanup if one eats the couch." Jaden's face lit up. "Okay." As he sprinted back out, Maya reached for the envelope again, running her fingers over her own name, Ms. Maya Rivera, as though it didn't quite belong to her anymore. That name used to mean something else. A dreamer, a painter, a woman who believed that love, when it was real, could weather ambition. But now? Now she was a single mother with a full-time job, 3 wild-hearted children, and a life built entirely from the pieces Logan left behind. And yet, the past still found ways to knock on her door. Lexi arrived later with iced coffee and an agenda. "Okay," she said, dropping onto the couch. "Let's game this out. Are we going to make a statement, or are we going to light the place on fire?" Maya raised an eyebrow. "I'm not crashing the wedding with gasoline." "Good, figuratively then." Lexi sipped her drink. "Listen. He invited you for one reason. He wants you to see what he became without you." Maya nodded. "Power move. Classic, but here's the twist. He doesn't know he's about to be outplayed." Maya looked toward the kids' room. They were coloring together on the floor, huddled like a tiny committee, their foreheads nearly touching. "I don't want to use them," she said quietly. Lexi softened. "You're not. But they're part of your truth. He made choices. You made sacrifices. He should see the result of both." Maya swallowed. Her throat felt tight. "He's getting married," she said finally. "To someone who fits, someone from his world." Lexi leaned forward. "You didn't ask to be part of his world, but it asked something of you anyway. You raised his children, alone. You don't owe him silence." Silence. That was what Maya had chosen for 5 years, not out of spite, but out of survival. But now, maybe it was time. Not to shame him, not to fight for something that was long gone, but to stand her ground in the story she had lived and never told. She looked again at the envelope. Logan had built a life without her. One so pristine, so immaculately curated, it could hold 1,000 people and still feel empty. And she was going to walk into it. Not broken, not bitter, but whole. Later that evening, after the kids had gone to bed, Maya sat at the kitchen table and wrote out a short RSVP card. Name attending, Maya Rivera guests, 3. She hesitated for just a second before sliding the card into the return envelope. She had no idea what Logan would feel when he opened it. Shock? Panic? Regret? It didn't matter, because Maya wasn't going to the wedding to reclaim love. She was going to reclaim the narrative. Across town, Logan Carmichael was reading over the revised seating chart, irritated that the Hollingsworth family insisted on being placed near the media wall, but not directly in the photos. His phone buzzed. Angela's voice came through his earpiece. "Your RSVP numbers are finalized. One more just came in. Maya Rivera, +3. Logan blinked. 3? There was a pause. "That's what it says." He turned to the window. The city stretched endlessly before him, golden with the early evening haze. Maya was coming, and she wasn't coming alone. For the first time in weeks, Logan felt the edges of control begin to slip. He told himself he could handle it, but deep down he knew nothing about this would go the way he planned. The Ashford estate shimmered like a dream carved from money. Perched in the green hills above the Hudson Valley, the sprawling estate had once belonged to a steel tycoon. Now it belonged to florists, planners, photographers, and a team of stylists working overtime to ensure Lena Hollingsworth's wedding to Logan Carmichael looked like a lifestyle magazine come to life. It was the Friday before the ceremony, rehearsal day. The air was laced with lilac and anticipation. Logan walked through the grand ballroom, one hand tucked into his pocket, the other tapping absently on his phone. Staff scurried past him with purpose, adjusting crystal light fixtures, testing sound levels, arranging imported orchids on mirrored pedestals. He should have been impressed. Instead, all he felt was restless. Lena stood near the window, sipping sparkling water from a stemless glass. Her gown fitting had just ended, and her reflection in the window was framed by the low-hanging chandelier. "Don't you think the lighting is too cold?" she asked as he approached. "I told them I want soft white, not blue. The last thing I need is looking like I'm marrying you from a morgue." Logan offered a faint smile. "I'll talk to them." She turned, studying him. "You okay?" "Yeah." A pause. "You've been distracted." He gave a tight nod. "Just thinking about the guest list." She tilted her head. "We already cleared it, remember? No surprises. No one from college. No weird cousins. And no press in the ceremony space." Logan hesitated. "Someone RSVP'd this morning. Maya." Lena blinked. "Maya Rivera?" He nodded. "And?" she asked, swirling the glass in her hand. "She's bringing 3 guests." Lena's brows lifted, but she said nothing. He watched her expression, composed, curious, calculating. Maya, Lena said slowly, is the one who painted in that studio in Brooklyn, right? You dated her when you were still broke? Logan tensed. Yes. And she's bringing 3 people. Friends? Kids, he said, the words slipping out like a confession. Lena's face didn't change, but her body stilled. He clarified. I don't know that for sure, but I think... He trailed off, unsure how to finish the sentence. Unsure how to admit that in all his careful calculations, all his curated power plays, he hadn't considered this possibility. That Maya might not have walked away empty-handed. That she might not have walked away at all. Lena turned toward the window again, sipping slowly. I suppose it's poetic, she murmured. You built an empire to prove you didn't need her, and now she's walking into your castle with something you never knew you lost. Her voice wasn't cruel, just observant, cool, like someone watching a chess game from the balcony. You still want her here? Lena asked after a beat. Logan looked around the room, at the gleaming marble floors, the cascading orchids, the stage where he would say vows written more for legacy than love. I do, he said finally. Lena gave a small, non-committal nod and set her glass down. Then we adjust. That's what we do. She walked off without another word, heels tapping against imported stone, leaving Logan alone beneath the chandelier that suddenly felt much too bright. That same afternoon, Maya stood in a consignment boutique in Williamsburg, trying to zip the back of a pale gray dress that was simple, elegant, and still twice as expensive as what she came in for. Lexi stood behind her, frowning. It's not zipped, Maya exhaled. I know it's not zipped. You're not wearing a cardigan over that, right? Because this neckline is working for you, honey. Maya gave her a look in the mirror. Lexi stepped back. Okay, just saying. You're walking into a room full of shark smiles and custom veneers. Might as well let them know you still bite. Maya turned slightly, trying to see the back of the dress. Her reflection stared back, older maybe, a little leaner, but still her. Still the woman who once sat on a rooftop in Bushwick with Logan Carmichael and believed they could build something real from nothing. I'm not going for revenge, she said quietly. Lexi's voice softened. I know. I just want him to see. Really see. Lexi met her eyes in the mirror. He will. At the Ashford estate, Logan walked alone through the garden where the cocktail hour would be held. A string quartet rehearsed nearby, the music light and perfect, like something pulled from a movie trailer. He sat on a stone bench, scrolled through his messages, then stopped. Maya's RSVP confirmation, the line that hadn't left his mind since he saw it. Guests, 3. He ran a hand down his face. What would he say to her? To them? If they were his? What could he offer that she hadn't already given? He thought of the long nights he spent chasing funding, the parties, the women who had floated in and out like accessories, the years that passed in a blur of ambition. He thought it was the price of greatness. But what if it had just been cowardice? A breeze stirred the edges of the tulips nearby. Logan sat very still, the music swelling behind him. Tomorrow, Maya would walk into his world again, and this time, she wouldn't be alone. Maya stepped out of the hired car and smoothed the front of her dress, her fingers trembling slightly as she adjusted the neckline. The satin gray fabric clung to her gently, modest but elegant, timeless. It was the kind of dress that didn't try too hard, it just let you be who you were. The Ashford estate rose before her like a monument to another life, grand, immaculate, so pristine it almost looked fake, like something out of a movie she wouldn't have been cast in. Her heels clicked softly on the stone driveway as she gathered the hands of her children. Jaden on her right, Ella and Theo to her left. They were dressed in crisp black suits and a navy tulle dress, their curls brushed out, shoes polished, eyes wide. Theo clutched a small toy dinosaur in one hand, despite Maya's best efforts to leave it in the car. "I'm nervous," Ella whispered. Maya squeezed her hand. "Me too." A valet came forward, eyes flicking curiously over Maya, and then quickly down to the kids. He smiled politely, but said nothing. The estate gates opened. Inside, the atmosphere buzzed with hushed voices and the sound of champagne being poured. Strings of soft jazz played from a trio set up near the terrace. Guests in silk gowns and tailored tuxedos sipped cocktails beneath chandeliers imported from Milan. All heads turned when Maya entered. Not because she made a scene, but because she didn't. She walked slowly, her children by her side, her posture tall, her face unreadable. The triplets took it all in. Ella tugged on Maya's hand and whispered, "Is this a castle?" Maya smiled gently. "Something like that." The guests began whispering in earnest. Who was she? Was she someone important? And why did those children look familiar? Logan stood near the far end of the reception hall, speaking with a venture capitalist from San Francisco, who was clearly more interested in impressing Logan than listening to him. He saw Maya before his brain caught up with the fact that it was her. And then he saw them, the children, 3 of them, all with dark, expressive eyes and strong brows, all with his jawline, his dimple, his gaze. The world tilted slightly. The words from the investor in front of him blurred into white noise. Logan blinked once, then again, as if trying to make the scene real. Maya met his eyes from across the room. She didn't look away. She didn't smile either. She simply stood still, 3 small hands holding on to hers, as the crowd continued to murmur. Lena arrived seconds later, radiant in a champagne-colored designer gown. Her hair had been sculpted into a soft wave and pinned with a diamond clip passed down from her grandmother. She was every inch the bride society pages would rave about. Then she followed Logan's gaze. She saw Maya, and then the children. Her expression faltered. "What is this?" she said under her breath. Logan didn't answer. He took 1 step forward, then another. By the time he reached Maya, the room had hushed, as though someone had lowered the volume on the evening. "Maya," he said. His voice was low, rougher than he intended. "Logan," she replied, calm as glass. He looked down at the children. His eyes landed first on Jaden, then Ella, then Theo, who was gripping his toy dinosaur like it might fly away. He opened his mouth. Nothing came out. "These are my children," Maya said softly, but clearly enough for nearby guests to hear. "Jaden, Ella, Theo." Logan's throat worked, but no words followed. Theo took a cautious step forward and looked up at him. "Are you the man in Mommy's old picture?" Maya exhaled through her nose, steadying herself. Logan dropped to one knee. He didn't speak. He couldn't. He simply nodded. And for the first time in his adult life, Logan Carmichael didn't feel like the most powerful man in the room. He felt like a man standing in front of the truth, a truth dressed in a navy tulle dress and little clip-on bow ties, a truth that had eyes just like his. Behind them, cameras clicked, some discreet, some not. The whispers grew louder, sweeping through the hall like wildfire. Lena stood frozen in place, jaw tight, arms crossed over her flawless bodice. Her fiancé, the man she was marrying tomorrow, was on his knees in front of another woman, and 3 children. "Logan," she said finally, her voice sharp. "A word?" He stood slowly. He didn't look at her. Not yet. Instead, he looked at Maya. She met his gaze again, calm, unwavering. "I didn't come to ruin anything," she said softly. "I just came to stop pretending you didn't exist in our story." He nodded once, and for the first time in years, Logan didn't know what came next. The moment Maya stepped away from Logan, she felt her knees nearly buckle, not because of regret, not because of fear, but because the weight of the silence that followed their exchange settled like fog in her chest. She hadn't rehearsed what she would say. She hadn't planned the children's names as a reveal or chosen that exact moment to drop the truth like a pin in a ballroom. It had simply come out. The truth, finally spoken into the very world that had once erased her. Guests stood in elegant clusters, pretending not to stare while absolutely staring. Their murmurs felt like a second soundtrack to the soft jazz playing somewhere in the background. Jaden tugged on her dress. "Can we have one of those pink drinks with the fancy straws?" Maya blinked. "Just one," she said, brushing his hair gently. "No bubbles." Lexi appeared at her side like a woman on a mission, holding 2 mocktails with skewered fruit. "You okay?" she asked, her voice low. "I think so," Maya said. "Ask me in 5 minutes." Lexi nodded and turned her attention toward the crowd. "Well, you just stepped on a landmine and walked away looking like Grace Kelly. He, on the other hand—" Maya followed her gaze. Logan stood a few feet away, shell-shocked. The man who had once owned every room he entered now looked like a man who had just been handed a future he didn't know existed. And standing beside him was Lena. She was whispering, but it wasn't kind. Her fingers dug into his arm just enough to signal possession, her other hand gesturing toward Maya and the kids with icy precision. Maya looked away. Lexi exhaled. "You knew this would be messy, but you didn't come to coddle anyone." "No," Maya said. "I came to tell the truth." "And you did. But now what?" Lexi handed her the second mocktail. "Now you stay. You eat the fancy canapes. You let the children explore the fairy tale castle. And you show him, without saying another word, exactly what he walked away from." Maya nodded slowly. And for the first time since arriving, she exhaled. Across the room, Logan's world was spinning, and it didn't feel poetic. It felt like panic. His ears rang with Lena's voice, sharp, low, laced with disbelief. "Did you know?" she asked. "No," he said. "I didn't." "Then how do they look so much like you?" He couldn't answer that. The resemblance had been a gut punch, like looking into a mirror and seeing his past reflected back through 3 small, innocent faces. Lena stepped back, scanning his expression. "You slept with her, you left her, and now she shows up 5 years later with triplets that you didn't know about?" Logan ran a hand through his hair. "I swear to you I had no idea." Lena stared at him, her carefully painted features cracking around the edges. "Do you know what this looks like? Do you understand the press will spin this into a scandal before we even say our vows?" "I'm not thinking about the press," he said. "Of course you're not," she snapped. "You're thinking about her." That wasn't entirely true. He was thinking about the children. Jaden's curious stare, Ella's shy smile, Theo's grip on that ridiculous toy dinosaur. He was thinking about Maya, how calmly she had spoken his name, how her voice hadn't wavered when she introduced their children, how she had stood there without shame. He was thinking about the 5 years he'd spent chasing acquisitions, media deals, mergers, while his children were learning to walk, speak, and laugh without him. Lena folded her arms, her voice soft but no less dangerous. "You invited her to gloat, didn't you? To show her what she missed out on. I warned you this wasn't smart." He didn't deny it. Lena tilted her head. "So what now, Logan? Are you calling off the wedding?" "No." "Are you sure?" she asked, brows raised. "Because right now it feels like I'm the one waiting for you to make up your mind." He didn't answer. That was answer enough. With a breathless scoff, Lena turned on her heel and disappeared down the marble corridor, trailed by her assistant and a discreet security escort. Back in the reception hall, Maya stood at a high table with Lexi while the kids marveled at the chocolate fountain under the watchful eye of a kind server. Marcus slipped through the crowd and joined her, Logan's longtime friend, now COO of the tech empire Logan had built. He nodded respectfully, his expression unreadable. "It's good to see you," he said gently. "You too, Marcus. Wasn't sure you'd actually come. I wasn't sure either." He looked toward the kids. "They're amazing." "They're resilient," Maya said. "They don't know any other way." Marcus hesitated. "Logan didn't know, Maya. I believe that." "I know he didn't," she said. "But does that excuse how easily he left? How fast he erased me?" Marcus paused. "Maybe not. But I know him better than anyone. And if there's one thing I've learned, it's that guilt eats him alive, even if he won't say it out loud." Maya looked across the ballroom. Logan stood alone now. Guests gave him polite space, the way people do when someone has been publicly humbled. He didn't drink. He didn't speak. He just watched the triplets from afar, frozen in a moment that wouldn't stop unraveling. Maya turned back to Marcus. "Let him feel it," she said quietly. "For once, let him feel what it's like to not be in control." And with that, she walked over to her children, who were now happily licking melted chocolate off their hands. She smiled at them, pulled napkins from the table, and knelt to wipe their fingers. 3 small lives, untouched by the storm they'd walked into. And across the room, Logan watched her do it. For the first time, he wondered not how she had survived without him, but how he had survived without them. Maya hadn't planned to stay long after the truth was said, but the children were enchanted by the estate, its vast gardens, its glowing lanterns, the koi pond tucked in the far corner where Theo declared he saw $1 million goldfish. For once, Maya didn't have the heart to hurry them along. She sat on a bench beneath a flowering arbor, letting the quiet moment settle. A breeze lifted her hair. The sounds of laughter and clinking glasses had returned to the reception hall, dulled now by distance. She could hear the triplets giggling as they chased each other across the trimmed grass. They were safe. That was enough. You always hated these kinds of places. Maya didn't turn around. Logan's voice was closer now, software, careful. "I didn't hate them," she replied, eyes still on the kids. "I just didn't trust what they were built for." He stepped beside her, unsure whether to sit. And what was that? To impress people who already think too much of themselves. He let out a breath. It wasn't quite a laugh. "Maya." She finally turned to him, and the look on her face made him pause. There was no anger, no bitterness, just something quieter, older, wiser. "You don't have to explain," she said. "But I want to." She looked back at the children. "Wanting to, Logan, and being ready to, those are different things." He sat beside her, keeping a respectful distance. For a few moments they watched in silence as Jaden helped Ella balance on a stone path near the pond, while Theo tried to convince a koi to eat a blade of grass. "I didn't know," Logan said finally. "If I had—" "You'd have sent a check?" she asked, her voice light but sharp enough to draw blood. His jaw flexed. "Number I'd have showed up, or tried to." She looked at him then, steady. "The night you left, Logan, you made your choice. I wasn't part of the empire you were building. I wasn't scalable." His head dropped slightly. "You're right. I'm not looking for an apology, and I didn't come here to punish you." "Then why did you come?" he asked, his voice quieter now. She hesitated. "Because I wanted you to see them, to see what you missed." He looked at his hands, then back at her. "They're incredible. They're exhausting, she said with a small laugh, and wild, and kind, and stubborn. Jaden has your logic. Ella has your stare. Theo, God help us all, has your temper. Logan smiled for the first time that night. I didn't need to come here to find out if you were happy, Logan. I am. Not every day, not every minute. But I built something real. With them. Without you. He nodded, the weight of her words settling in his chest. I thought I had to give you up to become someone, he said. And now? I'm wondering if I became someone I don't even like. They sat in silence again. A few yards away, Marcus approached the kids with a handful of colorful fish food. They swarmed him like he was Santa Claus. Maya tilted her head. He's good with them. He's always been good with people, Logan replied. Maya gave him a look. Number. He's good with them. There's a difference. Logan followed her gaze. Marcus crouched low, letting Theo climb on his back while Jaden offered Ella a turn with the fish pellets. It was simple, easy, natural. You still close? Maya asked. Logan nodded. He's the one person I haven't lied to in the last 10 years. Maya didn't answer. Logan hesitated, then asked, Did he ever? No, Maya said before he could finish. Not that it's your business. He nodded slowly, swallowing the knot in his throat. I'm not here to fight, Logan, she said. I'm here to give our children the truth. Not a fantasy, not a fairy tale. The truth. He looked at her, really looked. And for the first time, he didn't see the girl who cried when he walked away, or the woman he thought he'd broken. He saw a mother, a force, a life he'd never taken the time to imagine. I want to know them, he said, if you'll let me. Maya's eyes flickered to the children again. That's not something you can request like a merger. That's something you earn. I know. Then start showing up, she said. Because if you disappear again, Logan, they'll remember. He nodded, humbled. So will I. A bell chimed in the distance. Dinner service was beginning inside. Maya stood and brushed invisible creases from her dress. Come on, kids, she called gently. The triplets bounded over, cheeks pink, eyes wide, hands sticky with koi food and joy. Jaden looked up at Logan, uncertain. Are you the man from Mommy's stories? He asked. Logan met his gaze and said, voice steady, I think I used to be. But I'd like to be something better. Theo squinted. Like a dragon tamer? Maya smiled. We'll see, Logan replied. And for the first time that evening, the weight in Maya's chest shifted, just slightly, into something else. Not forgiveness, not closure, but the beginning of something she never thought she'd offer him again. A chance. Lena found him in the study just after midnight. The party had thinned. The guests had moved on, to hotel bars, waiting limos, champagne-laced gossip. The ballroom lights had dimmed to their evening glow, casting soft golden shadows on the marble floors. But Logan had disappeared hours ago. She knew where to look. The Ashford study was carved from old mahogany, with walls lined in rare books that no one had ever read. It smelled faintly of cedar and old money. Lena walked in without knocking. Logan stood by the window, jacket gone, tie loose, staring out at the lawn where Maya and the children had stood earlier. He didn't turn when Lena entered. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. You've humiliated me, Lena said softly, arms folded. Logan didn't flinch. That wasn't my intention. I don't care about your intentions, Logan. I care about what everyone saw tonight. I care about how this looks. He turned to face her finally, eyes tired. How it looks or what it is? Does it matter? She snapped. He said nothing. Lena took a slow breath, steadying herself. When she spoke again, her voice was quieter. I told you this wedding wasn't just about us. It's about alignment, perception, family legacy. My father didn't want me to marry you because you were a disruptor. You were unpredictable, and I defended you. I said you were driven, visionary, principled. Logan looked down. But what I saw tonight, she continued, wasn't vision. It was fallout. From a past you never had the decency to disclose. I didn't know. That she had children? That they might be yours? Lena scoffed. You expect me to believe that never occurred to you? He hesitated. I knew Maya. I didn't expect her to stay silent forever. But I didn't think she'd... He trailed off. Show up? Lena filled in. Crash your wedding with your secrets? Logan sat heavily in one of the leather armchairs. They're not secrets anymore. No, she said flatly. Now they're headlines waiting to happen. He rubbed a hand over his face. They're not leverage, Lena. They're my kids. Lena's laugh was sharp, bitter. You're talking like a man who's just remembered he has a conscience. He met her eyes. Maybe I am. Silence stretched again. Lena crossed the room slowly, heels clicking across the polished floor. She stopped just short of him. You have a choice, she said. You can keep pretending this wedding is about love and legacy, or you can be honest with yourself about what you're running from. I'm not running, he said. No, she said, tilting her head. You're retreating. There's a difference. She reached into her purse and pulled out a small velvet ring box, setting it on the desk without ceremony. You have until morning, she said, to decide if you're marrying me for the image or walking toward the real mess you made. She left the room before he could answer. Upstairs, Maya sat on the edge of her bed in one of the estate's reserved guest suites. The triplets were asleep, limbs tangled in a pile of white hotel sheets and plush toys. The soft sound of a cartoon still hummed from the tablet at the foot of the bed. Maya's dress was draped over the armchair. Her hair was down, and her thoughts were racing. Lexi, curled up in the sitting chair with a glass of red wine, watched her with knowing eyes. You're thinking about him. I'm trying not to. Lexi sipped. He looked like a man who got hit by a truck full of karma. Maya cracked a smile, barely. Did you expect him to say the right thing? Lexi asked gently. I didn't expect anything, Maya said, which might be worse. Lexi leaned forward. You still love him? Maya blinked. It's not about love anymore. Liar. Maya exhaled. Okay, maybe it is, but it's not the same kind. It's not the love that wants to go back. It's the kind that hurts because you remember what could have been, before everything got ruined. Lexi nodded. That's the hardest kind to shake. They sat in silence, the hum of the tablet filling the room. He looked different, Maya said finally. Not just older, quieter, like life finally caught up to him. Lexi smiled over her wine. You were always his reckoning. He just didn't know it would wear sneakers and ask for fish food. Maya laughed, soft and tired, and downstairs, Logan stood alone, staring at the velvet ring box. The empire he'd built was still intact, but the man who ruled it was starting to realize something terrifying and true. He wasn't sure it was ever what he really wanted. The morning of the wedding arrived cloaked in silence. There were no cheerful knocks on the guest doors, no clinking of champagne flutes, no pre-ceremony selfies with glinting rings and designer robes. The staff moved quietly, aware something had shifted in the atmosphere. The Ashford estate, once buzzing with confidence and control, felt like a glass ballroom waiting for someone to throw the first stone. In Suite 4C, Lena Hollingsworth sat in her robe, hands clasped in her lap, a white satin dress hanging untouched in the armoire. Her mother stood beside her with a forced calm that only women raised in East Coast privilege could maintain. "You're overreacting," her mother said with clipped precision. "The children are a complication, not a crisis. He didn't cheat on you. He was young. You're marrying the man, not his past." Lena didn't answer. She wasn't thinking about the headlines. She wasn't even thinking about the dress. She was thinking about the look on Logan's face last night, when Maya had said their children's names. It wasn't fear, it wasn't shame. It was something else. Something Lena had never seen on him before. Wonder, awe, a kind of reverence. And worst of all, love. She stood abruptly. "I need to speak with him. Alone." Logan had barely slept. He'd stayed up most of the night pacing the study, then the garden, then the ballroom, watching the chandeliers sway gently from the early morning breeze that slipped in through a cracked window. He was still in yesterday's clothes, the knot of his tie now hanging limp against his chest. His mind kept looping the same images: Jaden's quiet strength, Ella's shy but knowing eyes, Theo's stubborn grin, and Maya, standing in that reception hall, calm and unshakable, as if she no longer needed his approval to exist in his world. He didn't know what he was more afraid of, how much he had missed, or how badly he wanted to fix it. A knock at the door pulled him from his spiral. Lena. She stepped in without waiting. He stood. "Lena." "I don't want the press statement," she interrupted. "I don't want the damage control." He closed his mouth. She moved into the center of the room, composed but unmistakably bruised. "I want the truth, Logan, not the version you give investors, not the version you give the world. Just me, you and me. One last time." He nodded slowly. "Okay." Lena crossed her arms. "Do you still want to marry me?" It should have been a simple answer, but Logan said nothing. That pause was everything. Lena closed her eyes briefly, then opened them. "You love her." "I did," he said. "Maybe I still do, but not the same way. I don't even know what that means anymore. She's the mother of your children." "I didn't know," he said again. "That's not what I asked." Logan hesitated. Then, "She's the part of me I buried to become this." Lena looked at him for a long time. "Then maybe you need to decide if this version of you is worth staying buried for." He swallowed hard. Lena took a step forward. "I loved you, Logan. I believed in what we could build. But I won't be the woman you hide behind while you figure out how to be a father." "I'm not asking you to." "No," she said quietly. "You don't have to." She walked to the desk and picked up the ring box, still sitting unopened from the night before. She set it gently on the table beside him. Then she leaned in and kissed his cheek. "You wanted a perfect wedding," she whispered. "But maybe what you need is a messy beginning." And with that, Lena Hollingsworth walked out of the study and out of Logan's life. Maya was helping Theo into his shoes when her door swung open without warning. Lexi burst in, wide-eyed, phone in hand. "You're going to want to see this." Maya straightened. "What now?" Lexi handed her the phone. A photo already going viral. Logan last night kneeling at eye level with the triplets, his hand resting gently on Theo's shoulder. The caption was vague but buzzworthy. "Tech Titan's secret family? Logan Carmichael. Seen with mystery children at wedding rehearsal." Maya felt her stomach turn. Lexi watched her carefully. "You okay?" "I didn't want this to become public," she murmured. "I didn't come here to make a spectacle." Lexi's voice was gentler now. "You didn't. But Logan's name is gasoline. All it takes is a spark." A knock sounded at the suite door. Maya opened it cautiously. Logan stood there, shirt wrinkled, eyes hollow, the weight of everything pressing into his posture. He looked past her at the triplets, now distracted by a coloring book Lexi had pulled from her bag. Then he looked at Maya. "It's over," he said. She frowned. The wedding? He nodded once. She left. I didn't fight her. Maya stepped out into the hallway, closing the door gently behind her. I didn't ask you to choose. I know, he said, but I needed to. A long pause settled between them. I don't want to disappear again, Logan said. I want to know them. If you'll let me, I'll work for it, earn it, whatever it takes. Maya studied him carefully. This wasn't the polished man who sold software to global giants. This was someone stripped of certainty, someone standing at the edge of the life he thought he wanted, realizing the cost. I don't need you to be perfect, she said softly. Just present. He nodded, something fragile flickering behind his eyes. Then Maya said the one thing he didn't expect, but hoped for more than anything. You should come to dinner next week. Nothing fancy, just us, them, you. He nodded again, this time steadier. I'd like that. And in that hallway, far from the flashbulbs, far from the fallout, they started something that didn't have a name yet. But it was real, and it was theirs. 3 days later, Logan stood in the hallway of Maya's brownstone, holding a grocery bag full of pasta, sauce, and fresh basil, like it was some kind of peace offering. The brownstone smelled like cinnamon and lived in warmth. There were finger paintings taped to the walls, mismatched sneakers by the door, and a crooked frame on the stairway that said, "Love is loud." Everything about it felt foreign to Logan, and painfully honest. Maya answered the door in jeans and a worn V-neck tee. No makeup, no armor, just Maya. You brought groceries? She asked, amused. I didn't want to show up empty-handed. She stepped aside, letting him in. Well, prepare to be judged. We do not make our own pasta in this house. He smiled. Noted. The kids were in the living room, glued to a cartoon. When they noticed him, Jaden blinked, then gave a hesitant wave. Theo barely looked up. Ella tilted her head, uncertain. Logan offered a small wave in return. It wasn't cold. It wasn't warm. It was the cautious beginning of something none of them had words for yet. Maya led him to the kitchen, where a small round table sat under a string of fairy lights clipped to the ceiling. He placed the bag on the counter, watching as she began to unpack it. You didn't have to do this, she said quietly. I know, he replied. I wanted to. She paused. This isn't going to be easy, Logan. I'm not expecting easy. She nodded, pulling out a jar of sauce. Then let's start with Earnest. They cooked in silence for a few minutes. Not awkward, just unfamiliar, like two people trying to remember how they used to move around each other. Finally, Maya broke the stillness. What was your plan? She asked. When you sent that invitation? He stirred the sauce. Honestly, I don't think I had one. She gave him a look. Okay, he admitted. I wanted you to see the life I'd built. I wanted to feel ahead, in control, like the one who won. Maya leaned against the counter, arms folded. And when you saw us? He met her eyes. I realized I'd lost more than I ever knew. The tension between them stretched, not sharp, but full of unsaid things. Maya glanced toward the living room. They've been asking questions, not big ones yet, just little things, like where you live, what your favorite food is. Do you like dogs? He swallowed. I can answer those. I told them you're learning, that you're figuring out how to be part of our world. That's true. I also told them you're not a superhero. You're not coming to rescue anyone. His gaze softened. Good, because I'm the one being rescued. She didn't smile, but her eyes just briefly warmed. Dinner was loud and chaotic. Theo spilled milk. Jaden demanded to know if Logan had ever been in jail. Ella asked if he could braid hair. Logan tried and failed spectacularly, which somehow earned him more points than if he'd succeeded. Maya watched from the kitchen doorway, her heart full and wary all at once. Later, after the kids had been tucked in and the last dish was drying on the rack, Maya poured 2 mugs of tea and joined Logan on the front steps. The street outside was quiet. The city softened under a pale moon and the distant hum of life beyond their block. "They asked if you'd come back next week," she said. He looked down at his hands. "Do you want me to?" She took a sip. "That depends." "On what?" "On whether this is about guilt or growth." Logan turned to her. "I've spent my whole life building things. Companies, deals, reputation, and the entire time I thought I was growing, but I think I was just escaping." Maya nodded slowly. "I don't expect you to forget what I did," he said, "but I'd like the chance to show you who I am now." She stared ahead at the streetlights flickering on one by one. "I'm not looking for you to be a hero," she said again. "I just want you to stay. That's the only thing they care about. That's the only thing I care about." He nodded. "I will." They sat in silence again, shoulder to shoulder, not touching, but closer than they'd been in years. And just as she stood to head inside, Logan reached out, not for her hand, not for her heart, but for the empty mug she held. "I'll wash this," he said. She looked at him for a long second, then handed it over without a word. And in that moment it was clear. Trust wasn't a grand gesture. It was built in the quiet things, one mug at a time. 2 weeks had passed since Logan sat on Maya's stoop, washing mugs and listening to bedtime giggles echo from the upstairs rooms. He'd shown up every Saturday since, not with gifts, not with grand gestures, but with his sleeves rolled, his phone off, and a heart, finally, open. He learned how to slice apples into shapes that didn't offend Theo. He taught Ella how to tie her shoelaces the astronaut way. And Jaden had started asking questions, real ones, about Logan's childhood, his job, his fears, and Logan, to his own surprise, answered every single one. But despite his steady presence, despite the moments that filled the cracks between them like gold in broken porcelain, Maya kept him at arm's length. Not unkindly, but firmly. And it gnawed at him in quiet places. One afternoon, as they walked back from the neighborhood park, Theo fast asleep on Logan's shoulders, Maya slowed at a corner store window and glanced at a flyer in the glass. Family art night, Saturday 6 p.m., paint, pizza, parents welcome. Logan caught the look. "What?" Maya hesitated. "It's just something the center does once a month. I usually help set up. The kids love it." "You want me to come?" She looked at him carefully. "Do you want to come?" "I do," he said, without missing a beat. And he meant it. That Saturday, Logan arrived early, nervous in a way that had nothing to do with boardrooms or press releases. He wore jeans and a Henley. Marcus had told him to stop dressing like a CEO at normal people things. The community center smelled like paint and pepperoni. Long tables were covered in butcher paper, cups of brushes, jars of glitter, paper plates full of thick, sticky glue. Chaos. Logan smiled. He found Maya at the back of the room tying an apron around her waist, laughing softly with another volunteer. Her eyes lit up when she saw the kids rush in. She gave Logan a nod. "Glad you made it." "Wouldn't miss it." But before he could respond, a familiar voice cut through the chatter. "Logan?" He turned. At first, he didn't recognize the woman walking toward him, until the sharp lines of her cheekbones and the clipped tone of her heels clicked into place. Veronica, his ex before Maya, before everything. The woman he'd dated just long enough for it to matter, but not long enough for it to last. Her expression was curious, cool. "I heard you were back in Brooklyn," she said, eyeing the glitter-covered table. "Didn't expect it to be like this." "Didn't expect to see you either," Logan said, keeping his tone polite. "I'm here with my niece," she explained, gesturing toward a small girl tangled in pipe cleaners. "What about you?" Maya appeared at his side just then, a paintbrush in one hand, and Theo clinging to the other. Logan glanced down, smiled, then looked back at Veronica. "My family," he said simply. Veronica's eyes flicked between them. "Oh," she said after a beat. "Well, looks like life found you after all." Her words were casual, but Maya heard the undercurrent. Veronica walked away without further comment, but the silence she left behind lingered like perfume. Logan turned to Maya. "You okay?" "I'm fine." He hesitated. "You don't have to be." She looked at him then, and her eyes, calm and steady, met his with something deeper than annoyance. "I'm not ashamed of this life," she said. "Not of this place. Not of how we got here. I didn't think you were. But it's different when people from your past look at us like we're a detour," he finished. Maya nodded. Logan reached for Theo, who had managed to glue a popsicle stick to his own shirt. "I used to think love had to look a certain way," he said. "Power couple, penthouse, headlines. And now?" He met her gaze. "Now I think love looks like stained t-shirts and sidewalk chalk." Her expression softened, but there was still distance behind her eyes. Later that night, after the kids were asleep and the last glitter bomb had been swept away, Logan lingered in the kitchen with Maya. He rinsed dishes while she packed up the remaining art supplies. "I saw something today," he said, his back to her. "In Veronica's face." Maya glanced over. "What?" "A reflection. Of the man I used to be. Before I met you. Before I knew what I'd walked away from." Maya dried her hands slowly. "And what did you see?" Logan turned, the dish towel still in his hands. "An image. Nothing real. A man more in love with power than people. And now?" "I want real," he said. "Even if it's hard. Even if I don't get it perfectly. I want this." Maya looked down, then back up at him. "I believe you mean that. But you don't believe in me yet," he said quietly. "I'm trying," she whispered. And it wasn't said with reluctance. It was said with hope, with caution, with love that had survived too much to be spoken casually. They stood in the soft hum of the kitchen, surrounded by tiny paint-streaked memories and the promise of a new kind of beginning. Not perfect, but present. The rain came down in sheets the next morning, washing the city in streaks of silver and noise. Maya stood at the window of her brownstone, coffee cooling in her hand, watching as Theo and Ella argued over who got to pick the cartoon. Jaden, as usual, mediated with the quiet diplomacy of a child who had long accepted that chaos was the default setting in their house. She hadn't slept well. The night before had been too much. Logan's vulnerability, Veronica's unexpected appearance, and her own tangled emotions colliding into a knot she didn't know how to loosen. He was trying. She could see it in his eyes, feel it in the way he spoke to the kids, how he remembered to bring extra napkins, how he instinctively moved closer when the world tried to humiliate what he'd once abandoned. But the part of her that had held it all together for 5 long years, the protector, the mother, the woman who'd built a life from the rubble, wasn't ready to hand over the blueprint. She wasn't sure she ever would be. A knock at the door broke her thoughts. Logan, soaked through, holding 2 coffees and a bag of warm bagels. He looked disheveled, earnest, and entirely unsure if he should even be standing there. "I know it's early," he said, "but I didn't want to miss a Saturday." She opened the door wider. "Come in, before you drown." The kids lit up when they saw him. Ella ran to him first, clutching his leg like he'd been gone for a year instead of a day. Theo was more skeptical, but he took a bagel. Jaden gave a shy smile. You're still coming next week, right? Logan crouched. I'll be here every week. You can count on that. It was a simple promise, but Maya felt the weight of it like a cord pulled taut inside her chest. Later, as the kids napped upstairs, Maya sat with Logan in the living room, the storm pressing gently against the windows like a drum roll. I didn't know how to tell you back then, she said suddenly. About the pregnancy. I wanted to. I wrote letters I never sent. I imagined what you'd say. But every version of you in my head chose work. I probably would have, Logan admitted. I was so consumed with becoming someone important. I thought I had to leave everything soft behind. Maya folded her arms, as if shielding her chest. I wasn't soft. I was the only real thing in your life. He looked at her, pain flickering behind his eyes. I know that now, and knowing it doesn't undo what it cost. A long silence fell between them. Finally, Logan spoke. Do you ever wish you'd told me sooner? Yes, she said. And no. I got to raise them without disappointment, without them waiting by the window for a man who never showed up. His throat tightened. That's what I'm afraid of. That no matter what I do, they'll remember I didn't show up for 5 years. Maya softened just a little. They don't remember your absence, but they will remember your presence if you stay. He nodded slowly. Then, what about us? She looked at him. What do you want, Maya? The question hung in the air, quiet but seismic. I want safety, she said. Consistency, not grand gestures. I want my children to feel like the ground beneath their feet won't move depending on your mood or your ambition. And me? Maya stood and walked toward the window, the gray light falling across her face. I don't know if there's still an us, Logan. I'm not saying never. But right now, I need you to prove you're not just here because your empire crumbled. I need to know you'd stay even if I never loved you again. He stood too, his voice barely above a whisper. I'd stay. Then do. She turned to him. Not as a partner, not yet, but as a father. That door's open. It wasn't the answer he'd wanted, but it was honest, real, and maybe, for the first time in his life, that was enough. Logan nodded. I'm going to keep showing up. Maya gave him a faint, tired smile. Then I'll keep the coffee warm. He stepped closer, wanting to kiss her, her cheek, her forehead, anything. But instead, he reached for her hand. She let him take it, just for a moment. Then she let go. That night, after the kids were tucked in and Logan had gone, Maya sat in the quiet, her heart a messy, pulsing thing. She didn't know if she trusted him yet. She didn't know if she could love him again. But she knew this. The man who once invited her to his wedding to watch her suffer had started to show up not as a warning from her past, but as a possibility in her future. And that was more powerful than anything he'd ever built. The Monday after the storm, Logan stood in front of the elevator bank at the Cobalt Dynamics headquarters, holding a resignation letter in one hand and a pen in the other. The letter wasn't typed. He'd written it by hand, something his legal team would probably scoff at. But this wasn't a press release. It was a reckoning. Behind him, Manhattan roared through glass walls. The view was breathtaking, just like the one from his penthouse. Everything he'd ever wanted sat beneath his feet. And none of it meant what it used to. The elevator pinged open. Marcus stepped out, coffee in hand, brows rising slightly when he saw Logan. Didn't expect to see you this early, Marcus said, nodding toward the letter. Or that serious. Logan held up the envelope. I'm stepping back. Marcus studied him. You sure? Logan nodded. You've been running this place better than I ever did. I was building a brand. You were building a company. And what will you do instead? Marcus asked, curious more than skeptical. Logan gave a soft laugh. Learn how to braid hair. Make pancakes that don't burn. Figure out what it means to be someone's dad, not just someone's name. Marcus didn't respond right away. Then he reached into his coat pocket and pulled out a small action figure, the same one Theo had left at the office weeks earlier when Maya stopped by with the triplets. He asked if this guy was a superhero, Marcus said, handing it to him. I said not yet. Logan swallowed the lump in his throat. They shook hands. No fanfare. No send-off speech. Just quiet understanding. Logan turned and walked out of the only empire he'd ever known, and into something far more uncertain and far more real. That evening he showed up at Maya's with nothing but a backpack slung over his shoulder and an armful of library books for the kids. Maya opened the door, clearly surprised. No work today? No work tomorrow either, he said, or the day after. She raised an eyebrow. Are you saying what I think you're saying? I stepped down. Maya blinked, caught off guard. Logan, that company was your life. It was, he said simply. Now I want a different life. The kids came running before she could respond. Ella grabbed the books, squealing at the covers. Mom, he brought the one about the fairy who builds robots. Jaden took his backpack and slung it over one shoulder. You staying for dinner again? Theo squinted at him. You got glitter in your hair last time. Don't mess up again. Logan grinned. No promises. Maya closed the door behind them, heart full and rattled all at once. Later that night, once the kids were tucked in and the dishes cleared, Logan joined her on the back stoop, the city lights twinkling softly behind the trees. I thought I'd feel panic, he said, stepping away. And? Maya asked. I feel quiet, like I've been shouting for 10 years and just now realized how tired I was. She smiled faintly. That's what happens when the noise stops. I want to build something else, he said. Not a company, not a brand, just trust, with you, with them. Even if it takes the rest of my life. Maya looked at him carefully. You understand that this isn't about proving yourself with gestures anymore, right? I do. It's about patience. About sticking around when it's boring, when it's messy. He nodded. She reached for his hand this time. This time she didn't let go. You're not the same man who left, she said. No, Logan replied. I'm the one who stayed. They sat in the dark, her head resting lightly on his shoulder, no longer enemies, no longer strangers, not quite lovers, but something stronger. Two people building something from the rubble of almost. And this time, neither one of them was walking away. Sunday mornings in Maya's house used to be a tornado of cereal spills, lost shoes, and sticky fingers. But now, as sunlight filtered through the gauzy kitchen curtains, the air felt different. Not quieter exactly, but steadier. Logan stood at the stove, sleeves rolled to his elbows, flipping pancakes with exaggerated concentration as Theo gave him loud instructions from a step stool beside him. You're supposed to wait until the bubbles pop, Theo said, pointing dramatically at the pan. Then flip, not before. Yes, chef, Logan muttered, grinning. Maya leaned against the doorframe, arms folded, watching the scene like it was something she'd dreamed once and forgotten until now. Ella sat at the table with a coloring book, her foot tapping rhythmically as she waited for her extra golden pancake. Jaden hovered near the fridge, silently arranging juice boxes like it was a mission. This wasn't a sleepover anymore. It wasn't a novelty. It was starting to look like a rhythm. And Maya, for the first time in a long time, wasn't holding her breath. Logan placed a lopsided stack of pancakes in the center of the table with a theatrical bow. Ladies and gentlemen, he announced, may I present the Carmichael Special, slightly crispy, questionably shaped, undeniably delicious. The kids clapped like he'd just won a cooking show. Maya rolled her eyes, smiling. You're lucky they're easy critics. Logan looked at her, and something passed between them. Not flirty, not performative, just honest, settled. A quiet understanding that this was becoming real. After breakfast, they took a walk to the park. It was nothing special. A few blocks under trees starting to lose their summer green, sidewalks full of chalk drawings and scooter wheels. But the ordinary was starting to feel sacred. At the playground, Logan pushed Ella on the swing while Maya sat on the bench beside Jaden, who was reading quietly, head bent in concentration. "I think he's starting to trust you," Maya said softly, watching Logan as he timed each push just right. "I hope so," Logan replied. "You've been showing up," she said. "And not just when it's convenient. That matters." He glanced over. "And you?" She smiled. "I'm still watching." He nodded. "Fair." There was a pause. "You know," Maya added, "for the first time since the wedding, I stopped thinking about what might go wrong." He turned to her, brows raised. "I've been so used to bracing for the fall. For years it's been me and the kids, and I didn't let anyone close enough to cause damage. But with you, I don't feel like I'm balancing on one foot anymore." "That's because I'm right here," he said. "Both feet down." She laughed, short and surprised. "That's corny." "I know," he grinned. "But true." They sat in silence again, but this time it was companionable. Logan broke it gently. "I was talking to Marcus last night." "Oh?" "He offered to buy me out of Cobalt, said I could stay on as advisor if I wanted, but otherwise it's mine to walk away from." Maya raised an eyebrow. "And what do you want?" "I want to build something slower, quieter, maybe a startup that does real social work, or nothing for a while. Just show up for school pickups and art nights." "You in a carpool line," she teased. "That I have to see?" "I'd wear a suit, intimidate the other parents." She laughed again, then looked at him, the humor fading into something softer. "Are you happy?" It was a deceptively simple question. Logan didn't answer right away. He looked out at the playground, at Theo trying to climb the slide the wrong way, at Ella swinging so high her shoes almost flew off, at Jaden reading without once checking over his shoulder to see if Logan was still there. "I am," he said finally. "And not because everything's perfect, but because for the first time, I'm in a life I didn't buy." Maya reached over and laced her fingers with his. He looked down at their joined hands, then up at her. "You know," he said quietly, "you could have destroyed me. You could have walked into that wedding and burned everything down." "I thought about it," she admitted with a shrug. "But I didn't want revenge. I wanted the truth, and I wanted my kids to know where they came from." He leaned in slightly, his voice low. "And now?" She tilted her head. "Now I'm thinking about where we go next." Logan exhaled, something unclenching in his chest. "I don't know what that looks like yet," she said. "But if you're still here a year from now, at parent-teacher nights, at backyard birthdays, in the middle of all the beautiful chaos we've built, I'll know you didn't just stay to fix something." "I'll be here," he said without hesitation. "No big speeches, no promises you can't keep," she warned gently. "Just the truth," he said. She nodded. "Then we'll figure it out." And as the children laughed and the breeze lifted the edges of the day, they sat side by side, no longer broken people trying to rewrite the past. They were something new now, still healing, still learning, but this time, doing it together. 1 year later. The backyard was alive with color, string lights hanging from the fence posts, paper lanterns swaying in the breeze, and the scent of grilled corn and summer jasmine floating in the air. Children darted across the lawn, shrieking with joy, foam swords and bubbles flying in every direction. It was Theo, Ella, and Jaden's 6th birthday. Triple the chaos, triple the sugar, triple the joy. and Logan was at the grill, flipping burgers with the same intensity he once brought to board meetings, wearing an apron that read, CEO of the BBQ. Maya stood near the drink table, laughing as Lexi offered unsolicited critiques on the cake frosting. Maya's hair was pulled back in a braid, a smear of icing on her cheek, her sundress wrinkled from holding too many children at once. She looked more radiant than she ever had under the lights of any gallery. Logan stole a glance at her as he set the last burger on a platter. This was the empire. Not the one built with venture capital and stock options, but one of messes and morning routines, bedtime stories and sidewalk chalk, forgiveness and slow healing. After the guests had trickled out, and the sun dipped below the rooftops, Maya brought out a fresh pitcher of lemonade and joined Logan on the steps of the porch. The triplets had crashed in a tangle of limbs and blankets inside, the party balloons drifting lazily toward the ceiling. They sat in the quiet hum of the evening side by side, like they had so many nights before. "So," Maya said softly, handing him a glass, "you survived your first birthday as a full-time dad." He grinned. "I think I pulled a muscle in my dignity." She laughed. "I still don't understand how Ella managed to convince me to wear a tiara and sing a Taylor Swift song in front of your neighbors." "Because she's your daughter," Maya said, "and she knows exactly how to work you." Logan sipped his drink, quiet for a moment. "I missed so much." "You did." He looked at her. "And yet, you let me in. You earned your way in." They sat for a long moment, the stillness stretching between them in that way only people who truly knew each other could share. "I've been thinking about legacy," he said finally. "Still wired for the Forbes list, huh?" she teased. "No," he said, smiling. "I mean the kind of legacy that's not public, that doesn't trend or sell." She nodded, waiting. "I spent years trying to impress the world, trying to outrun the small-town kid I used to be. I built a name people respected, but none of it mattered until I started showing up for dinner every Tuesday. Until Theo made me wear glitter nail polish to his art show. Until Jaden asked me how to fix a broken toy, and Ella told her teacher I was the best storyteller in the world." Maya's smile faltered, because her eyes were filling. Logan set his glass down. "I don't need the old life. Not the boardroom, not the headlines. I want this. I want you. And I'm not asking for another chance because I think I deserve it. I'm asking because I'm ready to build something, not from ambition, but from love." Maya wiped her cheek with the back of her hand. "I never thought I'd hear you say that. I never thought I'd mean it." She turned toward him. "You know, the day I opened your wedding invitation, I thought it was the cruelest thing I'd ever received." He looked down, guilt still lingering. "But it brought me here," she said, "to this version of you, and of me. I don't think I would have believed this was possible back then." He took her hand slowly, like he was still asking permission. She didn't pull away. "You're not just their father now," she said. "You're mine too, not in the way of ownership or dependence, but in the way you show up, in the way you stand beside me. That's a kind of partnership I never had before." He leaned in, forehead resting gently against hers. "No more running," he whispered. "No more waiting," she said. And just like that, there was no dramatic kiss, no fireworks, just a stillness between them that felt like home. Inside the house, the lights dimmed and the night deepened. The city buzzed in the distance, the world spinning with all its usual noise. But here, in this little Brooklyn backyard, love had found its way back, not as a grand return, but as something better, something earned, something that would last. Because this time the billionaire didn't need a wedding to prove he'd won. This time, he stayed, and that made all the difference.